Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon, and with me, as always, is Caleb. And we are going to wrap up the month of movies that neither one of us have seen. And we're going to be talking about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. But before we get to that, we're going to do like we always do. And Caleb, have you been watching anything good?
Before I touch on that real quick, and since it's the end of the month, it's just the perfect time to say I had another like title name for this month, um, that we should have maybe been using, and it was just first time watch,
Yeah,
which is a little bit more clear, concise, and direct to the point. So there you go.
yeah.
Now that we're done, there you go.
Well, we could do another time like that. Like
Yeah.
how it took us like 2 years to figure out Rocktober.
Yeah, we're great like
How
that.
pathetic is that?
Yeah.
Oh man.
The stuff that I've been watching, of course, busy, been working overtime, so not surprising that I don't really have much here. I did officially, I don't know if I mentioned last time or not, I did catch up to the live episodes of Bob's Burgers. So I actually, just as my kind of turn my brain off before I go to bed, I watch one episode of Bob's Burgers, still starting it over just it's like it's on in the background more than anything.
Rock.
But I am trying because there's a season or two that I'm behind in Rick and Morty, so I'm watching that as well. Something that I just started today, I haven't even finished the first episode though. My coworker had been trying to get me to watch this for a little while. Is It's an anime. I don't know if it's technically considered an anime, but have you heard of the show Arcane?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he been talking about it. I think they just released the second season or something recently. Um,
Rock.
so he was just like, "Oh, dude, you should check it out." So I told him I'd probably try to over this holiday weekend get started, and uh, the art style and everything has been pretty awesome and looks really good. Can't really say much about the show yet because, like I said, I haven't even completed the first episode. So we'll
Rock.
see how that goes.
Nice. For me, I haven't watched a whole heck of a lot either because I've been super busy with work.
Yay.
I did finish the entire series of Breaking Bad in a week, so I guess that's an accomplishment. Being one of those shows that just completely sucks you in. And I've seen it before a couple times, so it was something even I could even have on and listen to like while I was working, and like, you know, I knew what was happening. And then there's other things that I forgot about, so it was a nice rewatch. I do need to watch Better Call Saul. I haven't watched that,
Okay. Yeah, I
and I've
haven't
heard
seen
it's
that
pretty
either.
good.
Hmm.
I also watched the new Cold Case, the John Benet Ramsey murder thing. It's
Okay.
on Netflix. I watched the first 2 episodes of it. There's 3 episodes. I fell asleep the other night watching it and missed the last one.
Mm.
But I don't know, that thing just that whole instance or whatever murder just interests me because no one knows who did it. But and then lastly, I watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles again because I mean it's while we're recording this, it's the day before Thanksgiving. So I mean it's the best Thanksgiving movie and one of the few Thanksgiving movies.
What
So definitely
about
had to watch it.
Hello Son-in-Law?
Oh yeah, that is a Thanksgiving movie, isn't it? And
Yeah.
so is Dutch, which is basically just Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah. I'm not that it was bad, but Planes Trains quite leaps and bounds better than Dutch in
Oh
my
yeah,
opinion.
for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is an all-time classic.
Hmm.
But that is pretty much it for me. I guess since this is before Thanksgiving and it's gonna come out the day after on Black Friday, what do you think the best Thanksgiving side dish is?
Best Thanksgiving side dish. Oh, it's really gonna kind of depend on who makes it. I one dish that I always like to see and have is a good green bean casserole,
Rock.
but um I think my favorite specific for Thanksgiving is if somebody does a good stuffing,
Yeah,
like when they do it right, because there's obviously so many ways, and of course there's stuffing, and then there's what's the other word for it?
dressing.
Dressing. Yeah, because
Yeah,
stuffing is the one where they actually like cook it in the turkey, and dressing is when they just make the dish.
yeah.
So yeah, it does not cover and say all stuffings are created equal. It has to be a good one. So, what about you though?
Yeah, mine is stuffing for sure.
Okay.
Like my mom always made it in a crock pot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then she used to stuff some into the turkey, but then like stopped doing that. But yeah, that's always been my favorite. I make it now because I mean, I make the turkey, I make the stuffing, I make the gravy,
Oh,
and
rock.
then like when everybody comes, I kind of just bring something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, stuffing is by far my favorite. I do like green bean casserole a lot too, and my mother-in-law makes one that is like green bean casserole, but it also has Kluski noodles in it and bacon.
Huh. Bacon, I've heard pretty common. The noodles, that's interesting.
Yeah, apparently like she used to work at some restaurant back in high school and they made that.
Hmm.
So like she makes it every single year and it's really good.
Yeah, you gotta have the crispy onions on
Oh
top.
yeah, it's got that. It's got everything else a green bean casserole has in it, except it also has bacon and Kluski noodles.
Rock.
Yeah, good stuff. But yeah, so we watched Rocky Horror Picture Show. So I mean, we probably should talk about it. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is from 1975 and is directed by Jim Sharman. The plot is a newly engaged couple have a breakdown in an isolated area and must seek shelter at the bizarre residence of Dr. Frankenfurter. The cast, we got Tim Curry as Dr. Frankenfurter, Susan Sarandon as Janet Weiss, Barry Bostwick as Brad Majors, Richard O'Brien as Riffraff, Patricia Quinn as Magenta, Nell Campbell as Columbia, Peter Hinwood as Rocky Horror, and in a very brief scene, Meatloaf as Eddie. It was worth mention though.
Oh yeah.
So much like the rest of the movies from this month, it's a first time watch for both of us.
Oh yeah.
Um,
First time and
and
maybe last time.
I was just gonna say, I am not the target audience for this movie.
No, I did you have any idea, understanding of what this was going in?
Um, Not really. I knew it was a musical, and I'm not a musical fan.
Yeah.
So I
I knew
knew that, like, that this wasn't really made for me.
yeah. I um I knew it was a musical, knew it had a cult following, um knew it had to do with something with Tim Curry and cross-dressing and like to what capacity that revolved around the story. Really had no idea.
Yeah.
That was really kind of it. So,
Yeah, me too. I think most of what I knew about this was from like just people mentioning it, seeing people dressed up, and there was an episode of the Drew Carey show where they went to go see Rocky Horror and they were dressed up.
that's funny.
Yeah.
The one thing
So,
I kind of want to start out with, I'm confused why it's called the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like
yeah, well
it
the dude that Tim Curry made, his name was Rocky Horror.
no, I know, but like it didn't seem like that was the focus.
No, not really.
Like I don't know, like the whole transsexual Transylvania would have probably made a better, more appropriate title,
Yeah, that's true.
but that probably would have freaked some people out with a name like that. So
Yeah. I mean, this was a little risque for the 70s.
yeah, I mean, heck, even calling it like Crazy Dr. Frankenfurter or something.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
yeah, and that was part of the thing going into it. Like I didn't realize Rocky Horror was a character in the movie.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. It's like, oh, so his name is Rocky. And then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, his name's Rocky Horror, so that makes sense.
Yeah, but it wasn't really all about him.
Even though it was his picture show.
Yeah, because if they had made a movie about the earlier version of him, Eddie, they would have what called it the Eddie Horror Picture Show.
Right.
So,
The Steve picture show. Oh
so
man.
that's my first kind of like knock on this movie, and I know like titles are not always the most important, but yeah, it just this is definitely one where I feel like the title was not really, I don't know, informative or uh made sense, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, yeah, maybe not the best title, but I mean, this started off as a like a play first. So whoever wrote that, maybe that was a little off base there. Uh, yeah, definitely. I've gone on statement to say before that musicals just aren't for me. Like I know a lot of people like them, but
Mm.
I just musicals always just make me groan. It's like, why are we singing dialogue? And this didn't have too much of that. It was more like we're just gonna break out into random musical numbers,
Yeah,
which is weird too. And like, what was the plot of this movie?
exactly. Like I don't well, the thing that was weird too is the fact that Tim Curry was the not priest, the pastor, the officiant of the wedding,
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden he's the Dr. Frankenfurter. Like is Dr. Frankenfurter and the priest the same person, or like what was the purpose of that? Because I thought that was going to lead into something bigger, but then it really had no tie to anything whatsoever.
yeah. I I can't really answer that for you.
Yeah.
We watched the same movie, and yeah, I can't really answer that. Um, there's a lot of really weird stuff in this movie. Uh, kind of like they show up at this castle and they want to use the phone, and it's like they say something about using the phone, and then Tim Curry goes off like doing all this random crap. Oh, you're invited to our party, and then it's like, oh, you got all these wet clothes on. I'll strip you down to your underwear.
Yeah. And they just walk around in their underwear then.
And I was like, they just want to use the phone. Yeah, s- I mean, Barry Bostwick has like a robe on most of the time, but Susan Sarandon's basically just running around in her underwear the whole time.
Mm.
Which I mean, as a man, I'm not complaining about, but it's a little weird, and how she's just kind of okay with it. And then she's like kind of prudish, but then like Tim Curry like assaults her, and then she's just kind of like, I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Well, then Tim Curry also
Tries to
hooks,
assault Barry
yeah,
Bostwick's character.
yeah, hooks up with the Brad character, and both Susan Sarandon and Barry Bostwick um, give in to the seduction or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
just like, okay, then.
Well, they're both virgins too, they've said.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
and then they're also engaged. So like Tim Curry sleeps with both of them, but they haven't slept with each other.
mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, what is this movie?
Yeah, very so all over the place.
Yeah, to say the least.
Oh, and then Susan Sarandon hooks up with Rocky Horror.
Yeah.
Like she
And
just
then all
goes
of a
off
sudden
the
they're
deep
just like,
end.
yeah, they're just like in love. Oh man. And Rocky Horror looks like He-Man. Like
No,
he's
no,
just like
no,
the super ripped guy and he's got like a bowl cut.
no. You know, who he looked like?
Flash Gordon?
Stewart.
Like a Rip Stewart.
Yeah. Let me do it.
Stewart!
Let me do it. As soon as I saw him, that was the first thing I thought of. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, that's Stewart right there."
Yeah, that's what he said to Susan Sarandon. Let me do it. And she just goes, oh, okay. Oh my gosh. Uh, this is one of those movies that's really hard to explain. I mean, I don't even know what went on. It's kind of the feeling I'm getting from you too. But it's things take like such turns and there's so many musical numbers that it just like it's one of those what am I watching movies, but to me it wasn't in a good way.
Yeah, no,
Where
for
like
sure.
Riccio was crazy as crap, but at the same time I was just laughing my butt off the whole time.
Yeah, and it seemed very linear, very streamlined. This is
Yeah.
like, so you're starting off with an engaged couple, and then they go up to this creepy mansion thing, and you get all this horror movie vibe stuff. So you're thinking like slasher movie kind of thing, but then
Yeah.
it turns into Frankenstein kind of thing, but it turns into like a sexual, transsexual, weird thing.
Hmm.
And then they start talking about they introduce the other characters like the Dr. Everett Scott later on, and they start talking about the government and they start talking about aliens and they start talking about like Transylvania as being another country or another planet. And you're just like, what is even
Well,
happening?
it's transsexual Transylvania.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Gotta clarify.
Yeah. And then he's like, oh, I'm going home. And it's like, no, you're not going. And then he gets zapped with the lasers.
Mm
Like really bad lasers that reminded me of Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
hmm.
And this movie had a budget where Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park was just a TV movie.
Yeah.
And they've got guns. I think it was about that time too where I was like, man, I'd rather watch Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park because at least that was laughably bad.
That's funny. Yeah, well, then the special laser worked on everyone else, but didn't work on Rocky Horror somehow or something.
Yeah, I don't know, his bulging rippliness.
Um,
Yeah, I would just there's a lot of things in this and was kind of surprised by the whole thing where Tim Curry like tries to seduce the Brad character. And I was just like, a homosexual sex scene in the 70s?
yeah,
And it's not like two women?
yeah,
You know, because all those exploitation movies, those were a lot of those were just like borderline porn.
hmm
But you never saw like a guy on guy scene. I'm like, this is kind of edgy for this time.
yeah. No, for sure. I recognize that too. I mean, obviously, with so many different parts of this movie, um, that it was just kind of like, man, this is. I can't imagine how this went over in the '70s.
Yeah. Um, and then with the whole laser zapping thing, I was like, Riff Raff kills everybody or transports them. I don't even know anymore.
Well,
And
yeah.
like,
So
I thought he zapped Susan Sarandon and Brad, but then later you see them running out of the house.
I don't think they got zapped. I think it was he zapped Tim Curry and he died. And then Rocky Horror freaked out and grabbed him and was acting like freaking King Kong on the Empire State Building, carrying him up the radio tower.
Yeah.
And then he eventually fell into the pool and they were all hanging out in the pool somehow. And then Riff Raff said that he was going to get out of there. And so he gave Susan Sarandon, Brad, and Dr. Everett a chance to leave.
Yeah.
Which I, I don't
Oh,
even
also
know.
the doctor in the wheelchair, he's related to Tim Curry? He
Uh,
said Tim Curry is like his nephew, didn't he?
no, Meatloaf.
Oh,
Eddie was
Meatloaf
his
was his
nephew.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah. So that's how even
I
more
mean, it doesn't really
confusing.
make sense, but
Yeah.
it makes more sense than Tim Curry being his nephew.
Well, the thing that really gets confusing though too is just like, well, so many things in this get confusing, but there's the coincidences of like Barry and Susan talking about that they were going to be meeting up with the Dr. Everett Scott because they got engaged. I can't remember exactly specifically what the reason was. And they were on their way to go see him. And then somehow they got on the wrong road and they wound up at Tim Curry's place. But then Dr. Everett Scott shows up at Tim Curry's place because conveniently, like his nephew had been there or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it just, I mean, they were really pushing the narrative on being like, oh, what a coincidence.
Oh, hi, Dr. Scott.
Yeah. Well, then also the other weird thing too is how they were trying to tell the story. Like they randomly started using that criminologist narrator guy,
Yeah.
and it's just I don't know. Like it didn't really fit and make sense. You would think that they would use a narrator to help explain things, and honestly, I don't think he really contributed and helped.
Yeah, he just kind of broke the fourth wall, is basically it.
Yeah.
That was really all I got from that. Ah. So we've talked about all the stuff that's weird. Was there anything that you thought was like good or great in this? Because we usually try to cover that.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because there is one thing that I will say that I did like that was good about this. Um, I guess I would say two things kind of. Performance wise, Tim Curry like made this movie.
Yeah.
If you didn't have Tim Curry, this movie I don't know what else this movie would be like, but it would be substantially less impressive. But the one thing that I did kind of, I guess you would say, enjoy or stood out to me was the Time Warp song.
Yeah.
The dance routine was ridiculous, but the song, I mean, I've heard that on the radio um, before and plenty of times and different things like that. So it was something that I recognized, and the song itself is fun.
Mm-hmm.
So really, that was kind of the only thing where I was just like, oh, okay,
I thought the
bonus
song at
point.
the beginning, that sci-fi double feature song,
Hmm.
where they mentioned like all the old movies, I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was unique.
That was good, and like you said, Tim Curry did a good job. I'm gonna go on record and say something that a lot of people will probably be like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" Because I know I'm in the minority for this.
Controversial.
I'm not a fan of Tim Curry. I
Err,
don't really like Tim Curry,
bro.
but I felt the same way about Robin Williams too, and people thought I was an idiot. So fine, I'm fine with that. Um, but I do admit he did a great job in this movie. Like you said, if it wasn't for him, like I don't even know what it would be. Um, and I don't know, it was nice seeing Susan Sarandon in something like early in her career, I guess. I think this was like her first movie
Yeah,
or
probably.
one of her first, yeah. But now I don't know. I always like her. I think she's a good actress, and um, I don't know, just one of those people that like stands up for her beliefs kind of thing and doesn't really bend to much.
Hmm.
So that's always kind of admirable. Uh, and Barry Bostwick, you know what I always remember him from?
What?
Spin City.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was the mayor in Spin City.
It took me a while to realize who he was. Like I was just like, man, I recognize him, but I cannot put my finger on what actor it was.
Yeah, he's been in lots of stuff, but that's really the one thing I always remember him from.
Hmm.
But yeah, my takeaway from this was I know this is a big cult movie, if not like one of the biggest cult movies.
Hmm.
I'm just not part of that cult.
Yeah. No, I had that down too. Like this is such a unique movie, and especially for when it came out, I can totally understand it getting a cult following. And just kind of like you said, I'm just not in that target market. Like it just does not resonate with me. Um, it it does have some things that are memorable and you can hold on to and be like, oh, you're not gonna forget that. But
Hmm.
it just it was like a blender where they just threw a bunch of stuff into it, and it's kind of, I don't know if maybe it was a passion project for them, but it seemed like something that they just had fun with, and
Yeah,
it definitely was not meant to be taken too seriously.
yeah. Tongue in cheek.
Hmm.
And a lot of times movies like that where it's like this goofy humor that's on purpose doesn't resonate as much with me as something like The Room, where it's like inadvertent humor
Oh yeah.
where it's trying to be a serious movie and it just has so many goofy points in it that it just makes you laugh.
Mm.
Um, yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it.
When were you first like aware of this movie that existed? Because I specifically remember, um, and it's weird because obviously they would be in different genres, but like the first time I saw this movie on the shelf some at a
I know
video
what you're
store,
gonna say, but
I
yeah,
was
keep
I was thinking of Rocky, the boxing movie, and I was just like,
exactly.
"What is this?"
Yeah, yeah. I remember the first time I heard of it is I went to Media Play. Do you remember that store? It was in
No.
Saginaw.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was it was a place that had it was kind of like Best Buy, except it had more like I don't even know how to explain it, like fan stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like that store would be better now. It kind of died out in like the early 2000s, but I always used to go and like look at the tapes, like when my dad would go and like buy CDs or tapes or whatever, and I go look at the VHS tapes, and I remember like I was like, oh, I wonder if they have like all the Rocky movies, and I'm like, the first thing that pops up is Rocky Horror Picture Show. I'm like, what is this? And I pulled it out, and I remember the cover of it. It was black, and it had, the red lips on the front. And said Rocky Horror Picture Show in red.
Mm.
Yeah, that's hilarious that you and I had like the same experience.
Oh man, like I could
Uh,
just imagine like a younger us where we're just like, oh, here's a Rocky movie. Oh, wonder what this is, and then start watching it. It's just like, what the actual crap is this?
where's Stallone at?
Hey, Adrian.
Is he gonna fight Tim Curry?
I would have watched the fight between Sylvester Stallone and Rocky Horror though.
Yeah.
I mean, he would have totally destroyed him, but that at least would have been entertaining.
Yeah. Oh man. Uh, well, anything else to add? Or did you want me to get into trivia and facts?
I am interested to hear trivia and facts,
All right.
because I feel like there's probably at least a few gems for this one.
Yeah. So, the first one I got here, according to interviews, Patricia Quinn only took the role in the play because she loved the opening song, that science fiction double feature. She was upset when she didn't get to sing it in the movie, but agreed to lip sync the words, and she was the pair of red lips at the beginning with the vocals by Richard O'Brien.
Okay.
This is the theatrical movie debut of Tim Curry.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. When the movie first opened, it had a traditional release with afternoon and early evening screenings. It bombed. Meatloaf said that he attended an opening week performance with the writer and director in the Midwest, and the theater was empty except for them.
Oh no.
Midnight screenings became popular in the mid 70s, and word of mouth began to spread that the midnight audience might enjoy this movie. It began showing at midnight in a few cities and became so popular that it has been shown continuously in movie theaters since 1975, making it the longest running theatrical run in history.
Oh.
The museum, it's something in German, Licht, Lichtspiel Cinema in Munich, Germany, has screened this movie every week since June 24th, 1977, offering special RHPS kits, the Rocky Horror Picture Show kits, to enable celebrations during the show. The kits contain a biscuit, uh, rice, a whistle, a candle, a sheet of paper, and instructions for the time warp.
Gosh.
Yeah. When Barry Bostwick pounds his fist on the table during the dinner scene, he actually pounded the hand of Susan Sarandon. So her reaction from um, the pounding was real and prominent.
Ooh,
She
ouch.
later got her revenge accidentally by stepping on Bostwick's foot with her spike heel during the floor show scene.
Hmm.
So his reaction is also visible. Filming took place from October to December in Bray, New Windsor, England. Barry Bostwick claims that he was always wet during filming because the castle had a leak. There was one, quote, warm room. It was filled with space heaters where the cast members could take turns warming up until the room caught fire.
Gosh.
Yeah. Making this movie was, quote, no picnic, as the cast and crew were pressured by time because they only had 5 weeks to do it. Uh, they all arrived in the studio early in the morning to get into makeup. Tim Curry's makeup took 4 hours to apply, so he learned how to do it himself. Due to the rigorous schedule, it was necessary for the process to be very businesslike and professional. There's very little partying during production, a contrast to the stage show's infamous after-hours shenanigans.
Hmm.
I am not sure how that makeup took 4 hours to do. It
Yeah.
wasn't that like intense. It's not like he was Freddy Krueger or something, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be a combination of hair and makeup because, yeah,
Yeah,
it's, I mean, yeah. Hmm.
who knows? So Richard O'Brien was concerned that Meatloaf might not be able to handle the hot patootie bless my soul. Um, O'Brien brought out the music and handed it to him, saying, "It's okay if you flub a few lines. No one in London cast has ever sung the whole thing correctly anyway." He looked at it and replied, "What's the problem?" and then sang the whole thing without skipping a beat. Here's an interesting one. Steve Martin auditioned for the role of Brad Majors.
I could see that, but I'm kind of glad that he did not.
Yeah, I mean, he did Little Shop of Horrors, which was a musical,
Yeah.
so I could see it. Pierre LaRoche, a former personal stylist for David Bowie, created this movie's makeup styles. He also created the signature look of Dr. Frankenfurter, which, I mean, doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Seems about right.
Vincent Price was offered the role of the criminologist, but turned it down due to scheduling conflicts. He was interested in the role as he had seen the West End musical and loved it.
That would have been pretty epic.
Yeah. So Mick Jagger wanted to play Dr. Frankenfurter in the movie version.
Oh, gosh.
That would have been weird.
Yeah.
Uh, and the last thing I got is this movie cost $1.2 million and it made 112 in the box office.
So,
112 million.
pretty good.
Yeah. Oh. So I noticed before we get to grades, because I forgot to mention this earlier, I noticed going through this movie and hearing the music that a lot of the songs were just like, I wonder when somebody wrote this if they're like, okay, now this song is going to sound like a David Bowie song, and this song is going to kind of have like an Alice Cooper sound to it.
That's funny.
Yeah, I noticed that like those were the two I could really pick out. Um I wish I would have wrote that down because I was like, oh, there was another song too. Um, I think it was, yeah, I think it was that science fiction double feature one. Really sounded like T Rex to me.
Hmm.
Like the singer from T Rex, his name was Mark Bolan.
Okay.
Yeah, he had a very similar voice to the guy that was singing that, and it was very much like an early T Rex song. Uh, yeah. Grades. IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes. What do you think they are?
Okay, this is gonna be really tricky because I do know that this is a super renowned movie, but I don't know if it's mostly just the audience or if it's also highly considered by people in general and the critics. So I'm going to guess an 8.1 for IMDb.
7.4.
Okay. Critic, Rotten Tomato, 85.
Close. 87.
Okay. Rotten Tomato audience, 95.
90%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rotten.
So what about you?
Oh man, this is so tough. Like because I feel like me trying to give this a good quote unquote fair grade is like someone who doesn't like awesomely bad movies trying to give a grade to The Room.
Yep.
So a lot of the times I can kind of um remove my bias from something and give it an honest review. This one is just really tough because there is not much of anything that resonates with me on this. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of going with the middle of the road where I'm like, it's not, again, I'm going to say I can understand people really liking this movie. Like, I don't know what other movies are quote unquote similar to this movie, but there are definitely a niche of moviegoers that this would strike a chord with.
Yeah.
Um, it is not a bad, like, it's entertaining. Um, Not maybe specifically for me, but I didn't get bored with it. Um, but it was just, I think one of the biggest things that was difficult for was it was just way too confusing. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know if this was like technically science fiction. Was this like meant to be more kind of close to horror slash? Because there was that one point in time where Tim Curry killed Meatloaf, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, he's gonna start going crazy and killing people. Like this is more of a slasher horror genre, and then that was like it. So it's just like it didn't have a very good identity.
No.
So I
It didn't
land,
know what it wanted to be at all. I agree with that.
yeah. And that's not to say again, like I think the good way of putting it is like this seemed like a passion project. Obviously, there was a play beforehand and everything, and so it was, it didn't sound like it was super fun making it, but it was a fun concept thing to work on for the people involved. I landed, like I said, in the middle of the road. I just gave it a 2.5.
And it's funny because exactly what I fell on.
Okay.
Because, like I said, this movie wasn't made for me. It
Mm,
wasn't, you know, I'm not the target audience of this movie. I don't enjoy musicals. I don't enjoy, like, the super goofy humor. I mean, I do like some trauma movies like The Toxic Avenger and stuff like that, but this, I don't know. It just wasn't my style of humor, I guess. And I said before, you know, I'm not a big Tim Curry fan. And yeah, it just didn't really resonate with me. I don't know. Like I don't feel like I could give it like a fair grade, but you know, since that's what we have to do, I've landed middle of the road as well with the 2.5.
well, another thing too to kind of contribute to me not giving it a higher grade, I had to watch it with the subtitles on because there were so many things that were hard for me to follow and hear what people were saying or singing.
Yeah.
So I did that. I will kind of say, like, if this movie was a lot more cleaned up and the storyline was a lot more linear and made sense, I still don't think I would give it anything higher than maybe a max like a 4 or 3.5. Like, again, I think a lot of the weight that goes into this one is the target audience and the uniqueness of the movie. And so again, not to dog it on being like, oh, this is such a bad, horrible movie. It's only 2.5. It's a very unique, probably one, if not the most unique movies that we've talked about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So next month is gonna be interesting. We're gonna be doing holiday movies. And it's kind of funny. I When I originally wrote out the schedule, I wasn't really thinking this way, but we have like two comedies and then two horror movies. So we're gonna be starting off next week. We're gonna be talking about Trading Places, which is a classic. Um, and then we're gonna be talking about Scrooged, the Bill Murray movie. And after that, before Christmas, we're gonna be doing Black Christmas, which is one I've wanted to do for quite a while because I think you'll really like it since you liked Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Um, and it predates Halloween, and it's a holiday slasher movie, so it's pretty interesting to think about.
Right.
And the last one I was trying to think like, okay, I don't want to do another Christmas movie because this one will be after Christmas. So I was like, okay, what's a New Year's movie? And really, I could only think of two: New Year's Evil and Terror Train. And I'm like, Terror Train is a much better movie than New Year's Evil, so we'll go with that. And we got we're starting off with Trading Places that has Jamie Lee Curtis in it, and we're ending with Terror Train that has Jamie Lee Curtis in it.
Rock.
Yeah. She might be the actor that has shown up the most in our podcast.
That would be a good that's kind of an interesting question. If we had stayed up, we definitely need to update. But if we had stayed up to date where we were listing, because we have a spreadsheet of movie titles, year, genre, budget, grades, and director and actors.
Yeah.
If we kept up on that, we would probably be able to kind of search and see how many people or how many times certain actors and directors show up. Because yeah, probably she's definitely one of the most common actors, and I would say probably the most common director is uh, Hughes.
Yeah, John Hughes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would say either Jamie Lee Curtis or Arnold
Yeah,
have showed up the most. And we did Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween H2O, Halloween Resurrection, and then like the three latest Halloween movies. Those all have Jamie Lee Curtis in it.
yeah.
And we did
Oh,
Blue Steel.
you know who another one uh, is, but I know he's not the most, but we have done quite a few Tom Hanks.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Thanks for nothing. But if you guys are liking the show, please subscribe and share. You can find us on all social media. Um, it's been a while since I put anything up on YouTube. I've just been so busy. But
yeah,
I've been putting the episodes on there, and there's some older stuff in there too if you want to check it out. Um, Probably what, a few weeks ago now, it was on Halloween. I put out the latest slasher quest, and that took me a long time to make. So if you guys are interested in that, check it out. I went through and picked my favorite movies, my favorite slasher movies from 1980. I plan on going through each year in the 80s, but it's gonna take me a long time. But yeah, check that out if you want. Come by next time. We're gonna be starting our holiday month, and we're gonna be talking about Trading Places. And until then, as always, be kind and rewind.